ladies and gentlemen, why don't you welcome the governor of the state of New York, the Honorable Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to be here. Boy, I was surprised. So many people from outside of New York. So many lost votes. Really breaks my heart. To the Italians, auguri, come sta? It is truly my pleasure to be here. First, to Reverend Butts, I want to thank him very much for that kind introduction. More, I want to thank him for what he does for this city and this great state and this great country. Reverend's right, we've known each other a long time. I don't really understand what happened. When we started about 25 years ago, he was a few years older than I was. Now, I'm a few years older than him. And I look a lot older than he does. That must be the power of our Lord taking care of Reverend Butts. But the Reverend was a very powerful force for me growing up. And, you watch other people, you learn from other people. And the Reverend always stood up for justice. Always stood up for justice. Didn't matter if it was popular, if it was unpopular, if he was going to win, if he wasn't going to lose. He was always there speaking for justice. And that I respect more than anything. That is leadership. That is belief in the congregation. That is a powerful voice looking to make this place a better place. He's been an educator, a houser, a community developer, but truly a leader in his genes and in his training, and it's an honor to be with him. Let's give him another round of applause. To Reverend Dr. Forbes, pleasure to be with you. Once again, Borough President Gail Brewer, Charlie King, a friend of mine who worked at HUD with me, as we heard from the Reverend Butts, and George Gresham. I'd ask him to stand, president of 1199. George. George and I were talking a few weeks ago about getting on the road and pushing two very important issues that are going to be decided by the state, which I'm here to talk to you about today. And we were having a glass of wine and thinking of great ideas we could do. We came up with the idea, why don't we get a big mobile home? We'll get a camper, and we'll drive all throughout this state in the camper, and we'll paint on the side of the camper, "Come support fair wages for an honest day's work on the camper." That's one of those ideas that sounds good for about the first 10 minutes, and then you spend the rest of your day dreading it. We have now been all over the state. It's like a rolling microwave, this RV. But we are getting the word out, and 1199 has been a great, great partner. I'm not here to talk to you about politics. I'm not here to talk to you about presidential politics. Truth is, I don't understand anything about what's going on, so I couldn't be of any help anyway. If any of you figure out what's going on, let me know, because I can't figure it out at all. I don't know that I want to figure it out either. I just want to close my eyes and make believe it's not happening, and then wake me up and just in time to vote. So, but the politics aside, because politics, what they're talking to you about is the politicians' reaction to the anger that people feel, right? They all talk about the anger that people feel and how the politicians are tapping into that anger. I find it more beneficial to talk about the anger and what's causing the anger and how do you resolve the anger. And the anger is real. And the anger is there for a good reason. If you're the middle class in this country, if you're the working families in this country, you have been going backwards for years. That is the truth. This new economy, everybody talks about the new economy and the number of new jobs. And by the way, we've created more private sector jobs in the state of New York than have ever existed before. We now have 7.8 million jobs, more jobs than have ever existed. But they're different jobs than existed 20 years ago. And the times when you had a middle-class job and you were working and earning money and the economy was working with you and you felt you could take care of your family, that's not this economy. This economy has polarized. There are people at the very high end who are making a lot of money, and if you have financial knowledge or financial resources, you can do very well. We've made more millionaires and billionaires than at any time in history. But the vast majority of people are going backwards. Literally, the middle class doesn't have the earning power that they had 20 years ago. It's the economy for the lucky and the left out. And the left out are angry. These were not the rules. The rules were you work full time, you work hard, life was going to be better for your children. I'm not sure life is going to be better for our children. I was supposed to be able to pay for a college education. You look at what it costs to pay for a college education, you need to mortgage a house. God forbid you have 2 kids. House was supposed to go up in value and you could retire on the value in the home. A lot of people are in homes that are of lower value than they were 7 years ago. So people are angry. And by the way, it's not just a feeling, it's true, it's real. They should be angry. And we want to do something about it. And we have 2 measures that are in the State Assembly and Senate right now being discussed, and they're going to be decided in about the next 3 weeks. One of them deals with the minimum wage. Now, Franklin Delano Roosevelt passed the minimum wage law. He was great governor of New York, became president of the United States, and the purpose of the minimum wage law was to allow everyone who works full-time a decent living. The words are decent living. Why? Because FDR's point was there's dignity in work. And if you work full-time, then you should have that dignity and that respect. The minimum wage law now has $9 as the top limit in New York. $9 is $18,000 a year. You can't pay for a family on $18,000 a year. You just can't. You add up food and rent, you can't do it. So we want to take the minimum wage, we want to raise it from $9 to $15 an hour so a family can actually live. Now, there's a lot of opposition to this. Why? Because the corporations don't want to pay the workers more money. And the opposition will say, well, government has no business telling companies what to do. Baloney. The minimum wage has been set in this nation for decades, and the state has been setting the minimum wage for decades. They'll say, well, if you raise the minimum wage, you're going to hurt the economy. Baloney. Over the past 20 years, we raised the minimum wage 8 times, 6 times the economy actually took off and did better. And they say, well, you shouldn't interfere with the private sector. Look how ludicrous what we're doing is right now. If you are a minimum wage worker, we just did a study on the fast food industry. You work for McDonald's. You get paid the minimum wage by McDonald's. Minimum wage $9, you get $18,000 a year. At $18,000 a year, you are still below the poverty level. So you qualify for food stamps and welfare. So that worker comes to New York State, we give that worker $7,000 in welfare payments. Who's we? You, me, equal we. McDonald's pays $18,000. We subsidize the McDonald's worker with $7,000. We're doing that for McDonald's, for Burger King, for all these chains that are paying the minimum wage. Why are our taxpayers subsidizing these multi-billion-dollar corporations? That's why people are angry, because the economy is rigged. How did we get to this place where we're subsidizing their workforce? And by the way, McDonald's made $4 billion last year. State of New York alone, we pay $700 million per year just to McDonald's and Burger King workers. It is absurd. It is absurd. And it has to stop. The second measure that's on the ballot is something called family leave. We believe in work, and we believe in hard work, but we also believe in balance with family. And this economy now is so productive, and everything is 24 hours a day, and you have a BlackBerry, and you have a cell phone, and they're pinning you, and you're pinning them back, that in the midst of this, family is getting lost. And there's no time for family. There are two ends of the extreme where family really, really matters. Times of birth and times of death. And when a mother has a child, the mother should have the right to stay home and be with that child and bond with that child and nurture that child and do it right. And by the way, the father should have the same right to be home and bond with that child and nurture that child. At the other end of the spectrum, when a loved one is sick and needs care, or a loved one is passing, we should have the right to be there for that person. I went through this last year with my father, who was a big fan of Reverend Butts. And my father, the doctor said, it's a matter of weeks. And I would go and I would spend time. Wasn't a lot to do, wasn't a lot that wasn't said, but just to be there, just to hold a hand, just to smile, just to tell a bad joke. Plus, my father always wanted to do his running commentary on the job I was doing as governor. What I did wrong that day, what I did wrong the day before, what I did wrong the week before. I didn't learn anything. I only listened to my mother. Go back and read his speeches. He's not even going to vote for me for re-election. You know, he had his whole... But that was the important time. And I learned the lesson the hard way. I did not spend as much time there as I should have. And I kick myself every day because there was always something important at the office. There was always an important event, and you had to do this, you had to do this, you had to do this. Truth is, I don't remember any of that stuff that was so important at the time. I only remember that I wasn't there for my father. And I would have wanted and traded anything to be there for my father nowadays. I could have done it. A lot of people don't even have that option. Federal law says you get 12 weeks of paid leave to be there with a family member in crisis. But the federal law allows you the time off. The employer can't fire you, but the federal government doesn't have any provision to get you paid for those 12 weeks. So they say you can take 12 weeks off, except who can take 12 weeks off without any pay? I don't want to be conspiratorial about Washington, but I think maybe the reason they passed that law was they knew you couldn't take the 12 weeks anyway because nobody can afford to. We have a New York bill that says we'll start an employee fund so we can pay people during that 12-week period so they don't have to choose between going hungry, going broke, not paying bills, and living life with a loved one. Those two measures, raising the minimum wage and what's called paid family leave, can dramatically improve people's lives. You take minimum wage workers from $9 an hour to $15 an hour, that's a tremendous raise. That's a whole different lifestyle. You give people the ability to be there at home when they need to be there at home. That's precious days and precious weeks. We are now at the decision-making time. Martin Luther King taught us that the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice, which is true. But he did not say it automatically bends towards justice. He was saying, Reverend Dr. King, that you can bend the arc towards justice, but he also said justice is a struggle and justice is a fight. And it's a good fight, but it is a fight, and it's going to take your effort and your struggle. I need your voice to be heard on these two issues. The opposition is very powerful. It's every powerful corporation that doesn't want to pay their workers. It's McDonald's that would much rather we pay than they pay. It's Burger Kings. It's big retail chains. It's all the big employees who don't want their people being off for 12 weeks. Their voices are very powerful in our government because their voices speak the language of green. You know the language of green? Well, that's what their voices are speaking. We need people to stand up and say, we deserve better. This is an economy that has left us powerless and voiceless. That's why there's an anger. Don't patronize the anger. Don't manipulate the anger politically. Resolve the anger by doing fairness and justice to the middle class in this state and in this nation. And that's what these two proposals will be all about. Thank you very much, and God bless you, and thank you for the time to speak with you today.